You're listening to the Frozen Fruit Podcast with Lamia Lexicon. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you might be listening on, and also give the podcast a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Frozen Fruit Pod. That is Frozen Fruit Pod Pod. You can also follow me on my social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Lamia Lexicon. The video for this interview will also be uploaded on my YouTube channel, or you can simply enjoy listening here. Once again, thanks for being here, and I hope you enjoy the episode. So I guess I should introduce you for the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody listening, please turn your undivided attention to our special guest for the evening, coming all the way from the frozen far north of Fairbanks, Alaska. She is the McBear Queen of Fairbanks. She is the voluptuous, the tantalizing, the ever so talented, the stunning, the gorgeous, amazing, beautiful, somewhat illiterate. She can't spell very well on the phone when she's texting. Please welcome to the stage, Penny Dragful.
Oh, thank you for having me. All
Thank
those
you.
things were true.
Thank you so much for joining me on Frozen Fruit.
Glad to be here.
And now, so you are you've lived most of your life in Fairbanks, Alaska, correct?
That is correct. I spent summers outside of Alaska, mainly every place you could think of on the East Coast. But if it's not 50 below, I haven't lived there. So
Right. And so tell me, what was it like growing up in Fairbanks as this baby drag queen just waiting to hatch?
well, at first I didn't know that drag is what I was looking for. So growing up, it was I was a really creative kid. I always drew and was like big into like acting and stuff. I wasn't big. I didn't start doing theater until I was in high school, but I didn't know until probably 21 that everything I was doing before then was it was drag. Like I could do everything that I was doing before in drag. But I was a pretty fun kid. I just did my schoolwork. I hated it, and I was a little bit of outsider when it came to my friend group because I always like was into like Lady Gaga and stuff like this, and my friends would like make fun of me at the time. So I didn't understand until later in life what those meant.
Right. And so you mentioned theater, and theater was really what led its way to you getting into drag. Would you say that's fair to say?
Yes, because theater led me to Rocky Horror, which made me question the art of blending gender. Because it was out of my comfort zone entirely when I started doing Rocky Horror. I was being a Transylvanian, but and then I worked my way slowly and got more comfortable as the years progressed. And Joel, or Catastrophe, was the only drag queen I knew at the time. So, and every year would be Frankenfurter here in Fairbanks.
And so tell me, because I think a lot of people don't know how much of a large event and tradition Rocky Horror is in Fairbanks. So tell me about the Fairbanks Rocky Horror. What is that like? And participating in it versus audience versus being in it. What is that experience like?
It is like the biggest, I would say the biggest thing this town does for queer stuff. We don't really have a pride event that we do. We do pride shows and stuff like that, but Fairbanks, the entire queer community come out and celebrate this weird, really bad, but also fabulous movie that is Rocky Horror. And I've done it, I would have to say 7 years now, I want to say. It's been a
Geez,
minute.
that's a long time. And so what roles have you done in the production? What is your repertoire of Rocky characters?
So I mostly have done Transylvanians. I have been a lead Transylvanian. I've been helped on costumes, also been Transylvanians. But the lead roles I have done, there's just three. actually. There is the criminologist, Magenta, and the absolute like epitome of my entire drag career, which is being Dr. Frankenfurter, back in 2018. And Golden Delicious is also the Frankenfurter in Anchorage. So her and I bounce back and forth on that.
And so, so would you consider Frankenfurter your favorite role in Rocky Horror?
Yes, Frankenfurter is like the reason people enjoy the movie. Like he is a villain, but also amazing and speaks so much to queer individuals.
Absolutely. No, I like couldn't agree more. And it's funny that a small town like Fairbanks really gets its freak on for Rocky and turns out because I did not know it was such a large event until participating in it and checking backstage and like peeling back the curtain and being like, oh crap, there's like 500 people out there in the audience. And I
Oh,
was not expecting that.
it's huge. The year that you're talking about in particular, Rachel, we were supposed to just start right at midnight. We didn't end up starting in like 12:45 because we got so many people in the space. And not only that, but we couldn't start because we had packed so many people in. We had to like give people like their money back because they had to be kicked out or we given them a chair because they were literally sitting on the stairs of the theater.
I remember that. It was like a fire code violation. And
Yes.
the UAF fire police were not joking around. They were like, this is like in conflict with fire code. This is not safe. Some of you people have to leave. And it's like, from a production standpoint and like a performer standpoint, it hurts so much to turn people away. I,
Right?
the very first show that I organized in Anchorage at UAA was very not overbooked because there we weren't selling tickets in advance, but there was a line out the door and we could not again fit enough people. We couldn't fit the people that were there into the room that the show was happening, and it was pretty like heartbreaking for me to like turn so many people away that turned out for like the event that I'd put so much work into. But that also means you're successful, so it's like six in one half, a dozen in the other.
I mean, every year that I've been a part of it, but it's this past year with COVID and all, it has gotten bigger and bigger. And Rachel, who does the show in Fairbanks, her ambitions keeps on getting bigger and bigger. And you want to light up a tank in the middle of the Salisbury? You got it. Is basically what her attitude about it. I'm excited. I can't say much because I know what her plans are for this upcoming year. So just everyone in Fairbanks and anyone outside near Fairbanks, you're going to want to go to it. That's all I'm going to say.
Ooh, well, you heard it here first. This is a Frozen Fruit Pod exclusive. Don't miss Rocky Horror 2021. And so we've talked about Rocky a lot now, but which I mean, we could literally do a whole podcast about Rocky and like analyze that movie. That movie is so interesting in so many
I think
ways.
that would be a good idea. I think that I would do that. Invite um, Gigi Goldie and Vivisection into that conversation. They have a ton of stuff to say about that character.
So tell me about finding your way to drag in Fairbanks. What piqued your interest? What caught your attention? And how did you actually get from, being interested in it to actually being on the stage in Fairbanks? And yeah, tell me
So,
about
like I
that.
said, it was with Rocky, but Caravan of Glam came to Fairbanks the first time in 2015, and that was the first like actual drag event that I've ever been to, and it was eye-opening and like amazing. I saw these amazing men in these fabulous garments that they made themselves too, doing not just beauty glam, but like different types of queer artistry, and it mesmerized me and drew me into the art that is drag. And then we actually had a performing group in town called House of Ursa Major that I used to go to their shows every month leading up to every month leading up to the fall of 2017, no, 2018. 2018, I was going to their shows every year, for every month, for a good while. And so seeing these three beautiful drag queens do this every month, they made me excited. And I was also watching, like, I'm part of that generation that watches like RuPaul's Drag Race. So I was just like pick and choosing. And I was at home in my very first apartment, like in my bedroom with a hand mirror, trying to do drag with the makeup that I had. And girl, I tell you, it was not good.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of a given for most of us is like, your first couple attempts, they're not going to be, the end all tea.
Yes, exactly. But I didn't start performing until that summer when there was the Fairbanks Golden Days event, and P-Flag did a partnership with Michael Bartels, who does stuff with the Court of Alaska, the Fairbanks branch. He had a competition drag show, and like four of us performed, and I performed some Once Upon a Time Evil Queen number from the musical episode of that show. And did not know it was a competition until like the end. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. I love this. And then a little gay boy drag queen who also started on the same day came in and had no wig, no pads, just came with busted makeup and some high heel boots and vogued and did 100 death drops. And who do you think won?
God, I hate little gay boys, don't you?
I mean, they're the worst. But that queen ended up being one of my favorite drag queens to perform with and stuff. And we actually did a couple numbers together. You all may know her as NB Delafleur. So we always started with a feud.
Lovely. Well,
Yeah.
it's so funny like that your story is literally an outdoor show, like in Fairbanks, Alaska. It's definitely not the
In a
typical
driveway.
in a driveway. It's not like the typical first gig that someone would have. And so you then went on to become a regular performer in the Fairbanks shows. And how would you describe the Fairbanks drag scene over the last couple years and your experience as a performer in Fairbanks?
So it started off being I've always liked to categorize like different style drags like cliques in high school, and early House at Ursa Major when I was performing was like the goths. We had the front runner for Fairbanks was someone who called herself a twisted Stepford wife and a literal drag monster creature who would do weird makeup and make masks. So I would say it started there, like being like the goss, but I think it's grown into something different than that. I think we have a variety of different styles of drag. We have a Broadway performer, we have a burlesque style performer. We have different styles of horror. Grim does I would say Hellraiser style of horror. I take inspiration from like 80s slasher films and 90s slasher films. So it just literally, we have it all.
I think for me, that's one of the really interesting aspects of drag in Fairbanks is that like for a very small I mean, I can't underscore very, very, very small drag scene. There's a lot of diversity within the styles of drag and within the interests of the performers. And I think that really kind of speaks to like the creativity of, I mean, I kind of see it being from Fairbanks myself. I kind of see it as like the sort of thing that keeps us sane during the winter, you know, when it's like super
Oh,
cold
hands
outside.
down.
It's super dark, like we're all just sort of like in the zone with our projects and our like ideas. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, I guess I do know. I mean, you're the one who's done like 200 days of drag in a row. And
It was it was 100 days, but that actually is that 100 days of drag actually got me a big name in Fairbanks and actually got me my spot in the House of Ursa Major. So
and so what did 100 days of drag entail for those who might not be familiar?
it is doing 100 continuous different makeup looks for, you guessed it, the 100 days.
So you mean to tell me that for 100 days you sat at home and spent 2 to 3 hours on your makeup, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to whatever it was per day for 100 days?
Yes.
That is an insane commitment. And what type of growth and like changes do you see in your style like over that time period?
I feel like it got a little bit more polished, and my ideas were coming through more at the end of the 100 days. When I started doing drag, I feel like with everyone, um, we do like these giant cat eyes and um, try to go from there. And so throughout my drag makeup process, it is definitely moved from not just that look. I can do that look, kind of doing that look right now, but I can go and do different things, and I got to practice like different special effects things I've always wanted to do during that 100 days. It was it was definitely a journey.
That's like one of the things I also wanted to ask you about because you do all of these crazy special effects makeups with blood and gore and burns and all of this gruesome and interesting and twisted stuff. And how do you teach yourself as a person, you know, who's grown up in Fairbanks, who lives in Fairbanks, you know, how does an individual teach themselves how to do all those types of things?
Lots and lots of YouTube videos. I watch multiple different FX artists on YouTube, and I feel like that's how anyone else in small towns learn how to do it. And I do trial and error. And um, you buy a at the Halloween store every year. You buy a jug of latex to last you till the next time that store is open, and you get yourself some coffee and you go crazy.
I love that. And I do think that's so important with drag is to like have the discipline and the interest and the passion to teach yourself new things and always be that is something that I've always really appreciated about your drag is you're like constantly changing and trying new things and experimenting and you're not, you know, pigeonholed into one type of idea or one type of look. That's not like a this is what Penny Dragful is. It's like this is what Penny Dragful is. Penny Dragful is anything, you know.
Well, thank you, because early Penny, a lot of people um, would tell me like, "Oh, I love your makeup, but it's always the same look, the same eye shape, different colors." So I really have been trying for the past year to move past like, "Oh, you can do the same eye every time."
So tell me about what is the history of drag in Fairbanks? You know, you have this small little town. It's about 30,000 people within the city limits, about 100,000 in the metropolitan area. What how long has drag been going on in Fairbanks and what ways has it existed?
So I'm not 100% sure how long it's existed in this town. I've done my own math and like trying to figure it out. I've talked to many people who are much older than us in the community to try, kind of pinpoint that there uh, was a group called Klondike Kings and Queens in the 90s and early 2000s. Um, and they had their own drag performance space, and I guess that kind of got shut down and stuff. But then the Court of All Alaska has always been like the key thing in Fairbanks, to my knowledge.
So just to clarify, you're talking about the Imperial Court?
Yes, sorry, I
Okay.
did. The Imperial Court of All Alaska. My I forget people don't know what I mean when I say the court.
I mean, like just two drag queens talking to each other. We know what you mean when you mean the court, but to a viewer, they might think that we have like a court date or like a parking ticket we got to take care of.
I actually have jury duty tomorrow, so.
Oh no.
No,
Really?
I'm joking.
Oh, okay. I was like, I thought that was suspended because of COVID. Shit. Well, so carry on. The Imperial Court was a key.
So here's how I'm going to fix the judicial system. You put everyone on these screens like we're doing right now, and you put their monitors in the jury space, and then that's how you do jury duty during COVID.
And then they just, vote them up or down. Done. It is what it is. Everyone go home. Done. See, yeah, they should hire drag queens to just run the government. Things would be done efficiently.
I feel like that would work more than how it's been going right now. So
I mean, everything would be held together with duct tape and spirit gum, but we'd get it done.
I feel like that's how things are being held right now.
You could be right about that.
And I have no business being in charge of any type of government. So,
well, so speaking of government and the court and the Imperial Court of all Alaska, you were talking about the history of drag in Fairbanks.
Yes. So, towards the end of I don't know when, but I'm guessing like mid to late 2000s, early 2010s, there was no drag in Fairbanks at all. They would always do the occasional event every now and then, but that's, from what I gathered from everyone else, that's the chunk of time that there was no drag in this town. And then the House Ursa Major happened, and that's when everything kind of started booming again. And now here we are.
It is really interesting the way things ebb and flow and different groups form and then break up. And you've been a consistent part of the Fairbanks drag scene the last couple years. Not couple years, but I think you've been doing drag about 5 years, right? Would that be correct?
Oh, not yet.
Not yet. Close,
I'm coming up on my 4-year anniversary of drag.
Okay. Well, what is the audience like in Fairbanks, Alaska?
I feel like they're a little harder than most drag. I've only performed in one other town, but I feel like you have to really they won't cheer for you if you're just going to do a simple number. You have to wow them, because I mean this town is cold, desperate, and so they need the wow factor a lot of the times, is how I feel.
Right. So they're not just going to be impressed by walking out on stage and standing and lip syncing and looking good. They want an experience. Yeah,
and that's how I would categorize the audience members. At most shows I've been to, the more memorable you are, the more people are going to talk. I mean, people still talk about me throwing white chocolate on my body 2 years ago. So
tell me about, what would someone expect if they went to go see Penny Dragful at a drag show? Because you do have a unique style and you like using lots of props and really giving the audience a full experience. So tell me about your inspirations and what you'd think about when you're constructing a performance.
Something Vivisection told me when I was starting out, Vivisection and Bianca Fusion are kind of like my drag mentors. I don't really have a mother, but Vivisection told me, what is the story you're trying to tell? And I didn't have a story. I was just going to do a drag thing. And then they told me that I need to think about that, and the concepts and the themes would come a lot more easier. And ever since then, they have. I've always had a story to tell. And a lot of my drag is inspired by Tim Burton films and slasher films of the 80s and 90s. I like looking like either a monster or that girl that gets slashed in the beginning of the movie.
I love that. And it's so interesting to see the inspirations in all of your performances and stuff. And I've seen you do numbers where you're a cannibal, carrying around the parts of their husband. I've seen you do ones where you're eating dollar bills and doing things to freak out the audience and pouring things on yourself. Pre-COVID, exactly. We should all predicate all of this with pre-COVID. But
I mean, there, I may not be doing some of those things anymore, like eating dollar bills. But if you go to a penny dragful show, you're going to see me getting weird, being gross a little bit, or being like funny and beautiful. It's you never see the same thing twice from me, I want to say. Not to toot my own horn.
And for you, the look is very important with your drag. You're always doing a different look from head to toe, you know, different makeup, different wigs, different clothing. And so what about that, you know, is it, do you condition yourself? Like, are you like, I need to look different every show, or is it just sort of, what's your drive with that?
I feel like more entertaining if I look different every time, and I don't want to bore myself. And um, I've done the look cute. Like, now, how can I improve from that? Is my thought process.
Well, and I think you touched on something that is pretty interesting, which is that with drag, you're not necessarily only performing for the audience, but it also is, you know, an act of self expression. And you're also not performing for yourself, but, you know, it is kind of like, it's almost like self care in a way, like the expression and like the artistic license with drag. And do you find that with your drag? Is it personal when you get on stage or when you're conveying something?
Oh yeah, when I lip sync, I like to be in that moment and give emotion, and whatever I'm feeling with that song or inside, what kind of like personal angered feelings I have. I like to express that and channel that through lip syncing.
Touched a little bit about it, but what has COVID been like? How has COVID impacted you as a performer and as a drag queen? What was, you know, how have you handled it, and what in what ways has it changed the way you approach drag?
So, I mean, with the digital shows, well, first off, when we started, the COVID stuff is also when an up and coming group in here in Fairbanks that I'm a part of, Klondike Drag happened. So we never got that chance to do an actual in-person show. So, which was kind of a bummer, but we grew, and ever since COVID happened, it's been isolating, but it's been nice because I've been focusing on shows and like creating these digital numbers and stuff like that, and helping produce these upcoming shows. So it's been okay. Yeah, so I'm struggling like the rest of everyone.
You are a frontline worker, you know, who works with customers every day and interacts with people. What has that been like in the context of
Oh
COVID and all of this craziness?
Lord, I have had, and I don't know how people in other towns are, but this is a very conservative town, and this is like people will go into Walmart with their guns on their attached to their pants and shit like that. Um, People do not like being told what to do. People want what they want, and if we don't have what they want, they get angry. It's dealing with a bunch of um, angry Karens, basically. But during the beginning of the pandemic, we closed our store down. But then when we opened back up, people were expecting that it would be back to normal. They were upset that because I work at a makeup store and we had to tape all our testers. No one could use a tester. And we're also a salon. And by the state requirement, you were required for your customers to wear a mask. And a lot of people in the beginning were vicious about that. Like, if you do not have a mask, you cannot be in our store. That is our policy. And a lot of people were like, oh, you're taking our rights away, blah, 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 blah. How dare you? I have asthma and stuff like this. Nowadays, every store requires that now. So it's not as bad. And we now give out those masks because we got so many complaints that we weren't doing that. But even during Christmas, I was like, this is a lot.
And it's so annoying, the lack of like common decency that people have. For me, that's one thing where constantly I have this love-hate relationship with Fairbanks, and being from Fairbanks, it's like, we're like Fairbanks pride. We got to hate on Anchorage people. Anchorage is not better than us, but at the same time, not comparing just the two of those, but just as a queer person living somewhere that is largely conservative, and you touched on that a little bit. What for you, what has your experience been like as a loud and proud, queer person, drag queen, living and working in Fairbanks?
I mean, I don't think people really care. Um, I have had the haters like say stuff to me, and it has bothered me a few times, but not to the point. Like I have gone to even pre-COVID, I was going to Walmart in full drag, and that's just like, oh, it's just another character you see in Walmart. I think I've noticed people be more aware of my appearance down when I would visit Anchorage. So that was always kind of like jarring thing because I used to wear whatever hell I want here and no one would give care. But like there I have like neon colored hair or just like not wig, but actual hair. And they're like, oh, he's weird. Let's give him a weird look.
That's so funny. And oh my gosh, I think if there's one thing that you could put on a poster to market yourself, it'd be Penny Dragful, another character you might see at Walmart. I love that. But it is interesting because I kind of feel the same way about Fairbanks, where like I don't go around and feel like endangered or anything like that. Like I don't feel unsafe in Fairbanks, but it's also just like you like low key know that you're amongst like a lot of Trumpy people that like are not going to vote for you to have rights and like other stuff like that. So it's kind of like we're left alone, but we're also not particularly supported as like queer people in Fairbanks.
And I would 100% agree with that. We're, this town is just like you're fine doing what you're doing, but if you uh, stand up again, say what you believe, you're going to get shut down.
I think that is a really interesting take. And you and I have both been around for situations where, not partisan Republican versus Democrat type of things, but where people with different ideas have in the performance community have really been at each other's throats and very vicious to each other and downright nasty on social media and in person. And it is kind of shocking sometimes how much conflict can exist within a small community. But then
Oh,
again,
100%.
I don't know. I mean, do you want to comment on any of that, or am I just
Um,
fishing?
well, I think that this town is really cold, and so I think certain people that we know of kind of were clapped back at that situation and not took it in a good way, and it escalated into a larger uh, thing that it actually was. Um, I actually feel like the those people and that person, I'm not going to say any names, but
Oop.
they still are at each other's throats to this day.
And it's like it's so unfortunate because there's really no need for that. But I think it kind of speaks to oh god, I had a thought and now I'm losing it.
How do you feel about that scenario?
It's I am not like a super conflict or drama oriented person. Like I do have conflicts with people because I do stand up for myself and like I will step up when I see something wrong that's happening, especially to my friends. But for me, like community and being involved in like things like shows and productions and like drag and stuff, that's like that there's like space for everybody and like there I don't see that there to be the need for conflict at such a local level when it's like, girl, we're not like this isn't showgirls. We're not like fighting for a spot on like the Vegas strip. Like it's like this is
No, if
Fairbanks. Like
anything, we're
y'all
more.
need to
If anything, we're more showgirls too.
Yeah, exactly. Showgirls two pennies from heaven, which by the way is one of the worst movies ever. I want to know what Rena Riffle was thinking when she created that movie, because it's like 4 hours long and it looks like it was shot on like a camcorder.
Every scene, I swear to God, of that movie was like the beginning of a really bad porn.
Absolutely. Like it in like the worst campy. It was like almost so bad that it was good, but then it was just too long. Because like I mean, we're drag queens. We can appreciate some camp, but like, girl, you gotta at least keep my attention.
It was only a 2 hour long movie, and we got like an hour into it. I was like, I feel like I've been here for forever. Like,
Exactly. So, regarding conflict in the LGBTQ community specifically, but kind of the larger performance community in general in Fairbanks, which intersects quite a bit with the LGBTQ queer community, I think one of the interesting things that I've noticed and observed throughout my time being involved in this community is that as performers, as drag queens, and as these people, visible doing these things, there's like a burden of responsibility that's placed on you. And it is not necessarily fair that you are asked to represent the community, but there is a burden and an expectation and like a social pressure. There's people, that are looking at what you're doing and saying and acting on in your words, your actions, and on social media. And they might be a little hypercritical, but I think that kind of just speaks to the importance that local performers have in small communities, which is that we don't have a lot of leaders, we don't have a lot of community, we don't actually even have an actual physical space that's dedicated for us. There's not a gay bar here, there's not a queer space. So people kind of look to the performers and they can be hypercritical, but I think that's also just because there's nothing else there to look to for leadership is not the right word, but to look to for a sense of community, for lack of a better word.
I would agree. I think that this town definitely is lacking in that kind of stuff. And being a part of these shows, you're not just like other cities. You focus more on yourself. But here you have to like be a producer, editor, think about like everyone as a whole and how to like you're a stage manager, director, producer, and a choreographer all at once. You're your own production.
Right. Like I would say there's no such thing as somebody in a place like Fairbanks who is like just a performer. There's nobody who like shows up, does their number, and like cashes out and leaves. It's like everybody is like involved in this in some way or another.
I would agree. You have to be like involved. I mean, even through digital, I would consider everyone involved has to do their part in like getting the word out because that's how do shows like this.
I think that really speaks to how drag has survived throughout COVID and throughout these digital shows is the fact that it's such a personal thing that makes use of everyone's personal networks of like their friends, family, and coworkers, and that's the real audience, of people that
Oh yeah,
are interested and have they're stakeholders within the local scene, because they actually know and care about the performers.
God, remember those days when you just could like go there and like you'd spend the entire day setting up and like a show, and nowadays it's like, oh, you're gonna film a number, maybe one part of that number, but during a live show it's like every I have no idea what I'm trying to say. I missed live performing is what I mean.
I know. No, I think what you were trying to say is like it's really just it's a whole different game, live
It
shows
really
versus
is.
versus the internet and these recorded numbers.
I mean, you have to think of. For me, I was like thinking of makeup that would work for every one of my looks, and think of that, and then go backstage, rip off the wig, throw that stuff on, and by the time I am finished, I have to go back on stage. Where here, I'm like, oh, I can do a visual thing where I can film this look with its own entirely thing, and then I could go and do this other thing on another day.
Exactly. And so there's both like pros and cons of it because you can space it out and work at your own pace, but then also I personally kind of feel like to do digital drag well, is more work than doing in-person drag well. But it's
I would say
it's a
it's a
different.
different kind of dynamic. And we have some performers in this town that are like starting out, and God bless them. They are, they don't know, they never really got the experience of an in-person show. So all they know is the digital life. So
Isn't that funny? There's a whole new generation of like COVID baby drag queens. And it's kind of like, I think like people used to, call like the social media girls or like the Miss Fames or like the whatever's like the people who predominantly did drag on social media and didn't really perform. They're like, the internet queens. And now it's like the internet queens got the upper hand with COVID, because it's like
I
they
was
already
just
knew.
gonna say, I feel like, and it's funny because in this community and any community I've seen, there are certain performers that have tried digital drag and it wasn't their tea. So they're just waiting for things to go back into place if they ever do. But there's also performers that have thrived with digital drag, and it's wonderful to see how the variety of people actually thriving through this platform.
I think one thing that's kind of cool with it is like a large part of drag success is like relationship building, and that's both a good and a bad thing, because it's like you can, I mean, like it's very important for performers to be nice and courteous and polite to like people who they meet, audience members or people they might connect with, and build connections so that you can get gigs. Like, I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is people have to like you to want to work with you. There is an aspect of like popularity contest with drag where it's like the girl with the most friends gets the most gigs, and digital drag has kind of flipped the script a little bit to where it's like maybe you're not the most popular in your local scene, but you have a lot of internet friends and you're getting all types of gigs all around the country, or you're in all types of digital shows.
I agree with that 100%. I feel like networking for if you're a drag queen, you have to network. That's just the real tea. You have to be you have to something Frieza DeLust taught me about being a network is you have to think about the audience as much as the performers. And live performing, you would have to like in during intermission, I saw that bitch at shows like talking to the audience, making sure that they were like having fun and taking pictures with them, and then in an entirely different look. So stuff like that, I definitely think a lot of performers have to think about. But with the digital platform, it's an entirely different strategy because you have to. The only thing that people know of from you is your quality of your video. So if you have a good quality video and know these people, you're going to get in other shows.
Right. No, it's so different, and it's interesting. I think what you said about networking is like so important, and it's like that's what a lot of baby drag queens and new drag queens don't understand is like it's not like you're gonna show up on the scene and like oh, I'm the prettiest and like I'm like the thinnest or whatever. It's like, girl, no, like you have to pay your dues and you have to build relationships with people. And there's a lot of trust in drag. There's trust that that you're going to show up and you're going to commit and you're going to pull your weight in the show. There's trust that you're going to
100%.
there's trust that you're not going to go out on stage and embarrass your performance group, because there's different things you can do to really upset or offend an audience. There's ways in which you can behave that are not really appropriate for certain situations, and you really have to gauge quite a bit about that. I think what's funny about drag is that drag is kind of seen as like debauchery and like sort of this like crazy thing and like this whatever, but you really do have to have a solid head on your shoulders in order to thrive in the different weird environments that drag will put you through.
Oh, 100%. I feel like drag is going in a different direction because of shows like Dragula and RuPaul's Drag Race and other kind of shows like that. It's like sports events now. But
I know, right? There's like so many different countries that with coming out with their own drag race seasons now that I'm just like, I can't keep up with this. This is
I know
ridiculous.
drag is, like I said, changing. So a lot more people are more accepting when it comes to drag nowadays, I feel like, than they did back in the day. I mean, you see an episode of Sex and the City and the drag queens are like the comedy joke in there, but then you have drag queens being aside Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born now and being invited to the Oscars. So it's
Right.
definitely a dynamic, and it's because of shows like Dragula and RuPaul's Drag Race.
It's so true. And it's like what would be amiss to not mention in this conversation is TikTok has really had such a huge drag influence. Like there is a lot of drag entertainers and drag gender variant performers, like there's kings and queens and what we would call bio queens or hyper queens and all types of non-binary people that really have like found a community and thrived on TikTok and built massive followings much larger than entertainers who actually have been on traditional seasons of like a cable television show like RuPaul's Drag Race. And it's really interesting to see the change in the online community.
I enjoy watching a ton of those videos while I'm in the bathroom. So, it's
That's where you get your little community update when you're on the toilet.
yeah, I get all my updates on the newest Barbie trend with Scarlet Crypt and
I know. No, I mean, like Scarlett's a good example of like, I think
thriving.
Scarlett, she is thriving. She has something crazy like 30 plus thousand, 40,000 followers on TikTok. I don't even know.
It's insane. I'm almost up to 1,000 myself, and I'm like, holy shit. And I just do random shit all the time. Like, but Scarlett, I love Scarlet Cripps so much that her videos are like all about Barbie and stuff nowadays. But I am learning so much facts I didn't know I needed to know about Barbies through watching Scarlet Cripps.
And I think that kind of speaks to like, people are looking to drag queens now for other types of entertainment besides just being a queen and being, the interesting thing or the joke yourself. Like it's like people are looking to drag queens for their thoughts on things, for the history on things, whether that's, someone might minimize it and be like, oh, she's just talking about dolls, but she's educating people. She's speaking with a subject as an authority, and people are looking to her as an authority as a drag queen, which it's cool.
We have a platform now that I mean, we always have this kind of platform, but I feel like now we have a bigger platform where we can talk about certain things. Like we are could be a comic relief for people. We can have a message to tell people, or like educate people on history or dolls or American Horror Story.
It always goes back to TV shows with this one and American Horror
You
Story
know,
and
I,
the essential references.
I mean, I have a lot of references to movies and television, but I I don't go out. Like even pre-COVID, everyone's like, "Oh, it's terrible. You can't go to the bar." I'm like, "What did I want to go to the rodeo and like do a two-step? Like, no, thank you, ma'am. I got American Horror Story to watch." Like,
I'm kind of in the same boat as you of where like I can be social if I need to be, but I'm perfectly happy staying at home and playing Sims 3 and doing whatever. Like
I
I'm
mean,
good.
I've always kind of been that way. I've never been the I've been a social butterfly and doing like stuff, but I feel more comfortable being social when it comes to like a show that I'm a part of or um, stuff like that. I've never like gone to a bar and got wasted, and that kind of like speaks to like my childhood too, because I grew up with alcohol being kind of a negative thing around my life. So I guess that's kind of been me. I never like I have there are like I count in my hand how many times I've gotten extremely drunk.
And that is like a subject that really hits home with I think a lot of queer people and a lot of people in and orbiting around the drag scene and the bar scene because alcohol is such a factor in drag. It's like it's kind of like the thing for the audience to go to the drag show and get wasted or like it's but how as an entertainer do you navigate being in a space that involves a lot of alcohol? Do you partake? Do you not partake? What is your MO with drinking and performance?
I always have a rule of one drink per show. usually a bar will have, and this also adds to my addiction, but I actually have an addiction to soda. So, um, bars will give out soda for free usually. So everywhere I performed has always given me a free soda. But I always like there's always that free drink that you get with your performance, at least here in Fairbanks. But I would do one drink and then take a couple sips throughout the day, but always have that soda or tea um, with me. So I've seen people get really sloppy drunk at shows, and it's just not cute.
Right. And it's like, I've never known you to be that queen that has a couple drinks too many and is suddenly a
Not
mess.
in public.
Not in public. She keeps it cute. Well, Penny, thank you so much for joining me. And is there what I guess I don't want to let you go because it's we're having so much fun chatting, but we have been talking about an hour now. So I guess before
Oh,
we as
really?
we
Wow, it doesn't even feel, it feels like we just started.
I know, right? We can blab forever. Before we let you go, what is on the horizon for Penny Dragful and what do you have in the upcoming future that we can look forward to?
So I am moving on up and out of this small town. Not that that it's a bad town. It's just I feel like I've kind of grown too comfortable in this town. And so I am moving to Anchorage and I'm going to see how things go there and really just try to push myself to be a better performer. I think this is the first time I've actually said this publicly.
I know. I think this might be a Frozen Fruit Pod exclusive announcement. Penny Dragful is relocating to Anchorage, and we're going to be so sad to lose you in Fairbanks, but we're wishing you all the best. And I mean, you really have done almost everything there is to do performance wise in Fairbanks. You've done theater, you've done Rocky Horror, you've done cabaret shows, you've done burlesque stuff, you've done things at dive bars, you've done things at theaters. So you've directed, you've
I've
produced.
directed. Um, I've um, I've sat with this other drag queen at a bar called Myrna's Marlin and gotten really drunk and played burlesque bingo.
I don't know what drag queen you could be referring to. It's definitely not this one.
uh, Favorite moment is when you and I were just sitting there shouting at Rachel, and Rachel's just shouting at us again, but she has the mic, so why is she shouting?
Oh my God, I know. And for an audience of like 8 people that are there,
8 people.
8 people, 30 below, and we're like, okay, this is what it is, but we're going to make it fun.
If you're performing at the Marlin with this one, you need a duck and cover because she will throw hard candy at you.
Well, I am so excited to see what Anchorage brings for you with your performance and your drag. And, it's going to be, Fairbanks won't be the same without you, but you're going to, you'll be back, I'm sure. And you're always welcome to
Every
come
now and then,
back.
I'm not. I'll be back eventually. It's not like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to be permanently coming back, but
Right. I meant that you'll find your way back to us and you'll pop back up to visit when you can. And Anchorage is really not that far away from Fairbanks. We like to pretend that there's a huge divide between the communities, but it's all Alaska, so we're all in this
it,
together.
it really is. I mean, it's only like a 6-hour drive away. So,
And that's the most Alaskan thing you can say. It's only a 6-hour drive away.
unless you get stuck in Iditarod traffic like me and Nick last year,
No,
it
ma'am.
turned into a 10-hour drive from Anchorage. It was not fun.
For real.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, folks, if you're listening, you can follow Penny Dragful on Instagram, on TikTok, I don't think you're on Twitter, but you are on Facebook. And you can also
I
find
don't.
her.
I have no business being on Twitter when I can't spell myself.
Well, you also can watch her Dragful reviews on YouTube for makeup videos and tutorials. And Penny, thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's been lovely to chat with you and catch up with you.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I miss you here in this cold, dark city of ours.
Once again, thank you so much and have a great
So
night.
long. Farewell.
LVter saying goodbye. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks for joining me today on Frozen Fruit. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and give us a like and follow on our social media. Additionally, if you have any feedback or suggestions for future interviews, please get in touch with me over social media or by Gmail at lamialexicon@gmail.com. Once again, hope you enjoyed the episode and have a great rest of your day. Bye!